It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Monday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. Well, our featured story, it's kind of a slow day today, slow news day. But our featured story, we're talking about what is new in the world of the generational run. I am in the news again. And tonight we're going to be talking all about my appearance on Piers Morgan Uncensored this morning. Come on now. Come on, give it up. W's in the chat. W's in the chat. Generational run doesn't stop. Generational run never stops. This is the eternal run. And we ended 2025 very strongly. I think this might be one of my last major collaborations this year. I still got a couple planned, but this is like the last big one, I think. And we ended on a great note. I'll be honest with you, I was a little nervous about this one. I was a little nervous. It's been a while since I did a combative interview with a liberal before. But I locked in. That's that simple. I got dialed in. I locked in. I prepared. I strategized. I studied. And I came out on top, the reigning champion. Who's left? Who's even left? What else you got? What else you got? What time is it, huh? Broken clock, right again. So we'll talk about it. We'll get into the appearance. It was a lot of fun. And I don't think it went the way Piers thought it would. Actually, I don't know. It's funny because during the interview and afterward, he seemed like he thought it went his way. But then I think he saw the comments on YouTube and on X. And then he started freaking out on Twitter and replying to everybody. And I don't think it got the reaction that he thought it would. And that's very telling. It ain't 2015 anymore, buddy. Different generation, and it's a different era. It's a new time. This is the year of the groyper, year of the frog, pal. That's the thing. A lot of these boomers, not only is there a generational divide in how we speak to each other and how we talk about these issues, but it's a different world. It's a different conversation. And the old playbook where they call you racist, they call you a misogynist, they call you an anti-Semite, and they expect that everybody is going to fall in line. It doesn't work like that anymore. It's 2025. This is a new chapter. And I'll talk about what I mean by that and why I think that is. But suffice to say, he came out of it feeling very confident, and then I think he was very surprised by some of the feedback. Well, it's a new world. So we'll talk about it. Good stuff, really good stuff. I think it was one of the most enjoyable interviews that I did. A lot of people told me that. They said it was their favorite interview I've done this year, or my favorite one I've done ever. People said it was hilarious, funny, but also insightful. I was pleased with myself. I was very proud of my performance. I thought it was terrific. So we'll talk all about that. We're also going to talk tonight about another Matrix attack. It's always like this. It always goes hand in glove. I always do really well. I'm blowing up. I'm successful. I'm red pilling the masses. And then I get the Matrix attacking me. And here's the timeline. Last week, Elon Musk calls me a Fed again. Candace Owens jumps in, of course, because she's a disgusting human being. And they're calling me a federal agent. I ratio Elon Musk. I reply to him. I say ratio. I ratio him 10 to 1 on his own platform. He's got 300 million followers. I have 1 million. I reply ratio. I get 105,000 likes. He gets 10,000 likes. And I say, well, Numbers speak for themselves. I guess people don't agree with you. So now a think tank, we'll talk about who's behind the think tank. A think tank comes out with a brand new report, and they say all those likes and retweets, oh, that's just fake. That's not real, they say. And their evidence is that more people retweet me in the first 30 minutes after I post something than people retweet Hassan Piker or Elon Musk or Destiny. That's the evidence. The evidence is I have fans. The evidence is I have real fans that have notifications on for my Twitter, and when I tweet something, they engage with it. So they put out the report, and now the report is being boosted everywhere by New York Post and Elon Musk and Data Republican, who's a spook, and a number of others. And this is how they play. They pile on and compound. Elon calls me a Fed. I ratio him. Then they come in, oh, that's not real. The ratio isn't real, and you're not really popular. Oh, okay. This is how it goes. So we'll talk about the organization behind the report. It's called the Network Contagion Research Institute. You might have heard of them before. They published a report earlier in the year. They said that the phrase Christ is King is anti-Semitic. Remember that one? It's the same group. The same group that pushed that report, that social media campaign back in the spring. They said it is anti-Semitic to say Christ is King. This is the same group that pushed this report. They're associated with the ADL, the Department of Homeland Security, George Soros Open Society Foundation, the Koch brothers network, and they're affiliated with the United Nations. And we'll talk a little bit more about them tonight. We'll pull back the layers on that, or peel back the layers. A lot of close ties with the Israeli state and the federal government as well. It always goes like that. So we'll talk about it. Should be a pretty good show. I'm excited. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think about the show. Also, check out our merch store. We have a brand new Black Friday merch haul. So we have all new designs, new shirts, new everything. We have credit card processing. We finally got it just, I think, a couple weeks ago. So check it out. Fuentes.store. We have the America First hats. We have the Wang Half t-shirt, white ass nigga going hard as fuck. That's me. That's me. I'm a white ass nigga going hard as fuck. But we also have a number of other brand new designs. Like I said, Fuentes.store. And we will be fulfilling those hopefully before Christmas or around Christmas time. So it'll make a great Christmas gift. Make sure to check that out. Also, subscribe to my website, americafirst.plus. It's $15 a month. You get access to the entire archive, every show I've ever done. If you pay $100 a month, $100 a month club, you get to be in a group chat with me and talk to me. It's actually me. I'm in the group chat, hanging out with everybody, and lifelong friendships are made, and I leave voice messages in there all the time. It's like I do a mini show in there a few times a week. So check that out as well, americafirst.plus. And with that, we're going to dive into the show. Yes, the long-awaited Piers Morgan interview took place today, and I want to give you my thoughts on it. First of all, how it came together. It's funny because Piers Morgan, his show is called Piers Morgan Uncensored. And for years, I was banned from the show. And he said that. He said that on his show. He said that I'm not allowed to go on. He said, I would never have Nick Fuentes on the show. He's too controversial. And so I would tweet at him. I think I've done it maybe a few times. And I said, how can you call it uncensored if I'm censored? That's not uncensored. If the most censored person isn't allowed on the show. And I am, I think, even to this day, still the most censored person. I'm still banned on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. The platforms that I'm allowed on are this one, Rumble, and Twitter. And on Rumble, I don't get a deal. I'm not on the front page. There's some other things. And then on Twitter, they won't let me get a check mark. I'm ineligible to buy a check mark. And anyway, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, I'm telling you, I'm still canceled. In many ways, I'm still censored. And so you can't call your show uncensored if you're censoring the most censored person. So I complained about that a lot. After the Tucker interview, they started talking about me like every week. I think they did like 7 shows, 5 or 6 shows about me since I did my interview with Tucker. And they would have a panel discussion about me while I'm banned from the show. So they're debating each other. Should he have a platform? Should he not? Should Tucker have talked to him? What did he do wrong? And I'm not allowed to engage. I'm not allowed to speak for myself or jump in. And so I called Piers Morgan out on my show a couple weeks ago. I said, how many shows is he going to do where he talks about me, but he won't talk to me? I said, because that doesn't seem fair. And so around Thanksgiving, he challenged me to come on the show. He said, you're right. It's about time. I'm going to talk to you. And he invited me on the show. And I got in touch with his producer, and we set it up very quickly, scheduled it for Monday. And I said last week that I expected it to be hostile. I said I was expecting an ambush. And then I corrected myself. I said it's not going to be an ambush because I know that it's going to be hostile. So with an ambush, there's an element of surprise. I said, it's not an ambush because there's no surprise. I said, I know exactly what I'm in for. And this morning or last night, I think it was, I'm not sure. They reassured me. They said, no, it's going to be live. It's going to be a live interview, 2 hours, one-on-one, no gimmicks. And I said, great. I think that's great. I was glad that it was live, because then I can be confident that it won't be edited or censored, or they're not going to mess with it in production. I said, that's fine. And so we do the interview. And like I said, it wasn't an ambush, but it was the usual Piers Morgan tabloid routine. He played all my clips, all the greatest hits, and basically asked me if I agreed with myself. That was the premise of the show. It was another clip show, and if you've been following me, you know what this is. You know how this goes. It's not the first one. I've been subjected to this many times. You go into the interview, and they play a clip for you, and they cut it out of context. They take 10 seconds, whatever it is, and they'll take something that's supposed to be a joke, or it's rhetorical, or whatever, and then they treat you like you're in a police interrogation. They treat you like you're in a courtroom. And they say, you submitted that on the record. And they act like you swore under oath that everything you've ever said is serious. And we all are familiar with that. They play the greatest hits, the things that sound the worst, and they ask you to defend it. And it's funny because I heard people explain it this way. They said that he's playing you clips from your own show and then asking you if you agree with yourself. It's like, of course I'm going to agree with myself. He plays a clip and then says, what did you mean by that? And I'm like, well, I meant what I said in the clip. Well, did you take that back? No, I said, it's my show. I said it on my show. Of course I agree with the clip. I said it. It's on my show. And so that was the structure. That was the format. Clip, response, clip, response. And I guess what was notable about it is that he was clearly going into this interview thinking, I have to assume this. He went into it thinking that I would be embarrassed or ashamed, or that he could shame me. And so he'll play a clip where I say, blacks should be in prison, women need to shut up, Jews are running America. And he thinks that I'm going to blush and get red in the face and go, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I'm not racist. I'm actually a really good guy. And I think he was surprised when I said, yeah, everything I said in that clip is true. And he said, really? Everything? Yeah. What about this part? Yeah, that too. Really? You think blacks should be in jail? Yeah, they commit too much crime. Well, white people commit crime. Yeah, they do it less. But they commit crime. Yeah, but less. But they commit crime. Yeah, but proportionally less. Okay, next subject. Like, and this was the flow of the interview. And I say that I have to assume this because he started out the interview with the Coleman Hughes clip. And Coleman Hughes is this black guy. He's like this black nerd at the Free Press. I had never heard of him. Apparently, he's very important to himself. And they play this clip from Coleman Hughes. He's at the Free Press. And for those that don't know, Free Press is Barry Weiss's publication. Barry Weiss is like an Israeli spy. She went to Columbia University. Well, actually, before she did that, she graduated high school and then went to Israel. Graduated high school, then did a fellowship in Israel. Went to Columbia, started a pro-Israel campus group where she tried to get professors fired for being in favor of Palestine. It was called the David Project and Columbia Unbecoming. Funnily enough, she was in the same group as Bronze Age Pervert. You know, Costin Alamaru, Bronze Age Pervert. He went to Columbia at the same year, and he worked on the same project, the same pro-Israel thing with Barry Weiss. Just a fun tidbit. After she graduated, Barry Weiss went back to Israel, and she did another fellowship under Yoram Hazony. She came back to the United States and started working for Bret Stephens, who is a Jewish editorialist for the Wall Street Journal at the time. Bret Stephens used to write for the Jerusalem Post before that. So he was like her mentor, and then took her to the New York Times. And then after the New York Times, she started Free Press. So she is like a trained Israeli propagandist. That's why she was in Israel. She was in Israel in high school, after college, in college, at Wall Street Journal, at New York Times. She is a trained Israeli propagandist, and that's what the Free Press is. And she was in the news lately because David Ellison, the son of Larry Ellison, bought her publication for $100 and some million and then made her the editor-in-chief of CBS. And now CBS is extremely pro-Israel. All their news reporting about Israel talks about how Hamas are terrorists and Israel's defending itself. And anyway, that's where this is coming from, just so you understand. And it's important to understand this for later in the story. So this Coleman Hughes, he's at Free Press. It's a pro-Israel propaganda outlet. And he does this video where he explains my strategy. And he says that when I'm on my show, I have one persona where I'm an extremist and a fanatic and I'm crazy and I'm hateful. He says, and then I go on an interview and I act moderate and I pretend like I'm a moderate, sensible, reasonable person, and I act polite and I'm nice and all this. He says, and that's the conceit, is that I'm doing a charm offensive. I'm pretending to be a nice guy. And then when I become dictator of America, I'm going to take the mask off and become the second Hitler. And I said this to Piers Morgan. I said, you know, first of all, he's a propagandist. Second of all, I said, my show is entertainment. I do a monologue, and it's funny, and it's rambunctious, and it's provocative. I said, and then when I do an interview, I explain my views in a serious and persuasive way. I said, that's not dishonest. That's just, we speak in an indoor voice when we're inside. We speak in an outdoor voice when we're outside. We talk to our parents one way. We talk to our male friends another way. That's just basic communication. I said, but the last part, which is that I'm going to seize power and then become Hitler, I said, I don't even know where that comes from. That just sounds totally crazy. That just sounds like a weird, it sounds like a Hollywood script. Nick Fuentes becomes president, then there's another Holocaust. I said, I'm not even going to engage with that. But he brought that up at the beginning of the interview. And the reason I say this is because in his mind, I think he thought that he was going to distill or break down the two personas. In his mind, all the other interviews, I'm being given softball questions and I'm being allowed to come across as reasonable. I'm being allowed to play the moderate and play the nice guy, and I'm doing this cynically, and the interviewer is letting me get away with it, and the public is getting this impression that I'm a really moderate guy. So in his mind, he's thinking, I'm going to play the clips from the show during the interview where he's trying to be the moderate. And he is going to have to deal with the contradiction of being a radical on the show, but attempting to appeal to a more moderate audience on my interview. So he starts out with the Coleman Hughes statement like this, and then he starts playing the clips. Okay, well, what about this from your show? What about that? And I'm sure he was expecting that if he's getting interviewed, Nick, that I'm going to try to wiggle my way out of that. I'm going to try and weasel my way out and say, oh, I didn't mean that. Oh, I don't know what I said. You know, I'm going to try and do something like that. And instead, I just said, yeah, no, I agree with that clip. And I agree with it completely. And that is what caught him off guard. And I think the biggest moment came when he said very early on, he said, so you're racist. Are you racist? And I said, yes, I am racist. Sure, I accept it. Call me a racist. And throughout the interview, I think once that happened, it was over. Because the entire purpose of the interview is to basically say, the rhetoric on your show is racist. Do you know that? The rhetoric on your show is misogynistic. Do you know that? Do you deny that? And once I accepted it and said, yes, I'm racist, I'm misogynistic. Now what? Okay, I'm racist. I don't care. I'm not ashamed. I won't even deny it. Now what? Now what do you have to say? Okay, congratulations. You did it. He said on Twitter before, he said, we're going to give a proper examination of his views. And I knew what that meant. I knew what was coming. He said, you're racist, aren't you? Admit it. I'm like, yeah, I am. I am. Now what? And what about that? Now what? And he had nothing. And throughout the interview, he's restating it in new ways, restating it in novel ways over and over. But you see, you said you're racist earlier, but you see, you've conceded you're racist. Does the audience know, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he is racist? And I said, congratulations. Congratulations, you've succeeded. Yes. And I don't know why you're so proud of yourself. I don't know why you're patting yourself on the back. This is something I've said on my show. It's something I've said in interviews. I said it to Candace Owens' face. Right before I explained human biodiversity, right before I explained race and IQ, I told her, yes, I'm racist. I said, you know, I used to say I'm racialist. Now I just say I'm racist. I don't care. I said, so I don't know why you're patting yourself on the back. And once I said that, it was over because he had nothing. There was no moral high ground. He couldn't shame me. And there was nothing substantive to say other than to point and sputter, you're a racist, you're a racist, you're misogynistic. And there's a lesson in this, which is that these words and these labels, and more than that, the shame, it only has as much power over you as you give it. Now, I understand that for normal people, there's a little more to the story, because if you get called a racist, you could lose your job. You could be expelled from school. Your wife or your girlfriend might leave you. Your family might disown you. So for other people, there are complications. But for people like myself, and I consider myself an opinion maker, a tastemaker, a public intellectual, an influencer, whatever you want to say, I'm an ideas person. My job is in the realm of ideas. I don't have a regular employer. For someone like myself to say, that word doesn't have power over me, I don't care. You can call me that. Once that happens, it's like a spell is broken. And the rest of it followed suit. So that's in the first place. I also want to talk about that whole approach, because what was really interesting to me, and we could go over some of the greatest hits. I'm sure we'll hear about it in the super chats, but I'm assuming you've all seen it or you've seen the viral clips. What was interesting to me about the interview is that he seemed to think in the middle of it, before, during, and after the engagement, that he was winning. Because during the interview, he kept saying, well, the audience is going to judge. Well, the viewers at home will decide. Thinking in his mind that they're eating this up, that the audience at home is folding their arms and saying, well, he's done it. Piers got him to admit he's racist. That's it. That's all we need to see. It's over. I don't need to hear anymore. He's racist, and that's all I needed to hear. That's it. And so during the interview, he kept falling back on this. Well, the audience can decide. It's sort of smugly. And even after the interview, on Twitter, is treating it like this was some grand victory. But if you looked at the comments, all the comments on Instagram, on X, on YouTube, they're all positive. People thought it was funny. People said I was logical. People said they found themselves agreeing with me. Or if they disagreed, they said they didn't find me all that extreme. They said that Piers was being dishonest and malicious. They said he's a liberal boomer. They said some of what he said was ridiculous, that he was angry. And I think there's sort of a corollary to this, which is I have been pushing this message for 10 years. And I have been dealing with hostile interviews like this for just as long. And I have been dealing with these clip shows for just as long too. At the end of the interview, he asked me how I thought it went. I said, you think you're the first one to do this? You thought this was a novel approach? You think this is the first time someone has played a clip out of context and asked me to explain it? I said, take a number and get to the back of the line. I've experienced this many times. And what's funny is, in my niche internet community, and maybe more broadly, my generation, this engagement between Zoomers and Boomers, it's been happening. It happened. It happened years ago. And what I mean by that is, maybe this is just reaching Piers Morgan now. But 5, 6 years ago, people like me were saying to their parents and other edgelords on Twitter and other people, other intellectuals in private were saying to equally as confused boomers, yeah, I'm racist, I don't care. In other words, this is something that has already happened in the past tense. We have been in a post-racist conversation for years. It happened quietly. It happened privately. It happened among the younger generation. It happened on the internet. It happened years ago, where people said, including myself and many other occasions, said, you know what, fine, we're racist. You can call me that. We don't care. We're comfortable with it. We want to have the conversation. And we're not going to be held back by the labels and the shaming and the grandstanding and all the rest. And it's funny that it has taken so many years for that concept to travel to the legacy media where Piers Morgan is. He's just finding out now. This is maybe the first time he's encountered this. I have to believe that because I go on his show at the end of 2025. It's almost 2026. And he's telling me, you're racist. Okay, I don't care. Well, it's over for you. The audience is going to hate that. And it's like, no, hate to break it to you, the audience is with me. And that's just it. That strategy of calling people racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, that had currency 10 years ago. That had power in 2015. Because in 2015, you could gesture to the audience and appeal to those sensibilities. And it would have been a knockout blow. If you could convince an audience that someone is a racist, or even if you make the charge that somebody is a racist, if someone identifies as a racist, the audience is against you. and the person accusing you has the moral high ground. You could gesture to the audience and that would be enough. Oh, well, I've done it. You see here, I've accused him of being a racist. And that, like I said, that had a currency with most people a long time ago. But that isn't the case anymore. It was like that, but it's not anymore. Now it's the opposite. And what Piers and Tucker and the rest of them don't understand is that I am extremely popular. And I'm not extremely popular because the economy's bad. I hate to tell you that. I hate to break it to you. They all want to tell the story that the only reason I'm popular is because of disaffected young white males can't enter the job market because housing prices are out of control. I'm extremely popular, and it ain't because of the job market. Okay? I became popular this year because this is the first year that I was completely uncensored. I became popular this year because in the intervening 3 or 4 years when I was censored, everybody got radicalized. Everybody got radicalized at home when they were locked down during the pandemic, and they watched the BLM riots, and they saw the lies from the mainstream media about the vaccine and about the virus itself. And they saw the Ukraine war, and they saw the Biden administration and what they attempted to foist on us, how they tried to jam that down our throats and tell us everything's okay. People in the past few years have gotten black fatigue, Israel fatigue, woke fatigue, everything you want to say. In the intervening 3 years, when I was banned, everybody caught up with me. Everybody got as radical as me, so that by the time I became uncensored, it was a match. By the time I became uncensored, there was a general public that had an appetite for it already. I maybe didn't even necessarily make them red-pilled. I didn't make them racist, sexist, the rest of it. They were those things. They had an appetite for those things. They had those feelings. They had those thoughts. And then I was allowed on Instagram, and I simply said them out loud. And for that, I became extremely popular this year. And again, not because they're mad about jobs, but because they see the behavior of black people in these cities after the George Floyd deconstruction of the police departments. It's social and cultural. They agree with what I say about that issue. Because throughout 2023 and 2024, we saw Israel committed genocide against Gaza, and we saw our Jewish-controlled media run cover for it. We saw one Jewish broadcaster after another from various Jewish media conglomerates give totally biased coverage. People like Ben Shapiro that obviously care far more about Israel, all they could do was talk about anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, while out of the other side of their mouth, they were saying, kill them all, there's no innocence, kill the children. That's why people like me. It's social and cultural. It's political. It's not because the economy's bad. It's not bitter, angry people with no jobs. It's a broad spectrum. It's white people and non-white people. It's men and women. It's young people and it's old people. It's broke people and it's rich people. Because everybody is seeing what is happening to the country because it's all online. It's all on TikTok. It's all on X. It's all on Instagram Reels. And people are tired of it. All of it. The mass migration, the black crime, the Israeli control over our society, the Jewish oligarchs controlling our society. People are done. And what they like about me is I have the balls, or I am in a position because I've already been canceled that I can say these things openly, with no shame, with no fear, articulately, because I've been talking about these things for years. And I say them without shame or reservation. That's why people like me. And what's funny is that Piers brings me on to expose that I have all those views in his mind to a public that is ignorant of those things. But he's the ignorant one. He doesn't know that the public agrees with me. He doesn't know that there's nothing to expose. The clips he played on his show are clips that have gone mega viral many times over on Instagram and TikTok already. And they went viral because people retweeted them. They reshared them. They sent them in group chats and in private messages. And they laughed at those clips with their friends. And they said, this is hilarious. I agree. So what's the game? You're going to expose those clips? Those clips went viral on Instagram because people agree. You're going to expose them to an audience that's seen them? For what purpose? They're going to not like what they agree with? It doesn't make any sense. And that's just it. In 2025, calling somebody those names, shaming people, guilting people over that kind of stuff, that no longer has currency. It has no power. Times have changed. People have changed. The country has changed. We have gone over the hill with wokeness. And what the f did you think that meant? Because Piers did too. Piers pushed LGBT on children's education. He pushed the COVID lockdown and the vax mandate. He pushed the Israeli genocide in Gaza. He now says he's anti-woke. Well, Piers, what did you think it meant to be anti-woke? Did you think it meant LGB without the T? Did you think it meant no Muslims in the UK, but Indians come on in and replace us? Did you think it meant there's only two genders, but men and women are definitely the same? And they're completely equal and there's no meaningful differences. What exactly did you think that meant? Everybody is sick of it. Everybody's tired of it. Everybody feels like I do. There's nothing there to expose. And you're not going to have a sympathetic audience, and you have no moral high ground. And without that, you have nothing. And I said this during the interview. I said, the reason you're losing to people like me, your generation's going out, you're an out-of-touch boomer. The reason I'm popular and surging, and you don't get it, the reason my generation is the way it is, and the rest of it, I said it's because of the way that you belittle and talk about those issues. He had a little moment in there. We were talking about Hitler, and we'll get to that, and why genocide. He said, oh, you think poor white Christians are being replaced. You think those poor white Christians are being genocided. Oh, poor white Christians. I said, that tone, the tone throughout. Oh, so you're a dinosaur. You're a misogynist. Oh, blah. I said, that tone you're taking, the haughty, morally superior, liberal, woke tone, I said, that is the reason why you're losing. That is the reason why your opinions are becoming irrelevant. That's why everyone's laughing at you. The country's changed. So a lot of people said in the comments, they said, well, this is what happens when a boomer and a zoomer talk to each other. That is totally true. There's clearly a generational divide, but it's bigger than that. It's that the audience has completely changed. And that is the real victory, I think, because it is true that 10 years ago, had Piers done the shtick of, oh, okay, you're a misogynistic, sexist, racist, anti-Semite, people go, oh, yeah, well, he is. Yeah, that's really shameful. Oh, my heavens, you can't say that. Now everyone's rooting for that. And by the way, what's on Instagram, it's even worse than what I say. I see clips of Gypsy Crusader. They get 300,000 likes on Instagram. 300,000 likes, millions of views. There are AI translated Hitler speeches that go mega viral on TikTok and Instagram. The people are way past that sort of thing. On that note, I want to talk a little bit about Hitler because he got really hung up on Hitler. And he asked me, do I affirm the Holocaust? Do I think Hitler is cool? And he got all bent out of shape. He said, I don't think Hitler is really cool. I think he's really a monster. And he's the worst mass murderer and this, that, and the other. And, you know, he asked me, what is it about Hitler that's cool? And I said, well, the edits, these video edits of Hitler set to music. They show the parades, the military, the speeches, the charisma. And that's just true. That's why I think it's cool. But after the interview, I was thinking to myself, why is Hitler cool? Because he definitely is. And when I say cool, I'm not saying he's good. I'm not saying he's great or anything like that. I'm saying he's cool. Darth Vader is cool. Hitler is cool. He's cool. When you watch the videos, well, you sort of have to be cool. How do you win the absolute allegiance of a nation of millions if you're not cool? If you don't have an X quality? I don't think anyone would deny that he's a charismatic speaker, a visionary, imaginative, that sort of thing, whether for good or for bad. Most would say bad, of course. But he's certainly cool. And I was thinking, because I saw a lot of the edits after the interview, people took that clip where I said, well, the edits, and then they spliced it with a Hitler edit, a hype edit where there's Euro pop music, techno music blasting, and it's the tanks and it's the speeches. And I was thinking, what is it about Hitler that's cool? Why does it tickle? Because kids love Hitler. Kids love Hitler. Young men see the edits. It's edgy. It's transgressive. There's something that feels naughty and dark about it, but there's also something electrifying about it. There's something sort of interesting. And I was thinking to myself with introspection, why is it cool? And here's why. Why is Hitler cool? I'll tell you why very simply. Because what Hitler represents is if white people didn't give a f. That's what it represents. When you see Hitler, when you see the edits, when you see the vision, and what is the vision? The vision is grand architecture, beautiful fashion, an unstoppable military. You see white people without limits, without restraint. You see white people without the self-imposed guilt, the shame. When people see a Hitler edit and say, that's cool, they don't think about the Holocaust. There's nothing cool about killing people. I'll just go on the record and say that. There's nothing cool about killing people. There's nothing cool about exterminationist ideology. There's nothing cool about anything like that. That's not why people are tickled by it. That's not why people are electrified by it. That's not part of the appeal. The appeal is not the weird pagan stuff that took place. The appeal is not the cruelty. The appeal is not the bigotry or the racial hatred. That's not the appeal. The appeal is that we have been living, and by we, I mean Americans, Westerners, white people, Christians, we are living in a time where all we know is self-imposed shame and guilt and self-hatred. Hating ourselves, hating our ancestors, having to apologize, rejecting the self, elevating and supporting the other, the racial and ethnic minority, the immigrant, the refugee, the someone of a different religion, the oppressed, the marginalized, the dysfunctional, whatever. And we have to feel sorry. We have to feel bad. We have to listen to HR representatives. We have to do environmental studies. We have to do studies about indigenous peoples. We have to do land acknowledgments. This is the society we've grown up in. We watch movies where we're the villains, TV shows where we're the villains, always. You watch Chicago PD, great show. Chicago PD, it's a show, it's a drama about police in Chicago. What do police in Chicago have to deal with every day? What in real life? Take a wild guess. What do Chicago police in real life have to deal with? They have to deal with black gangbangers. In the South Side, the West Side, the teen takeovers. They have to deal with the Latin Kings. They have to deal with Hispanic gang members. In the show, you would know that. It's always white people. And in the movies, the villain, always white people. In Star Wars, the new Star Wars, the Disney Star Wars, it's a ragtag group of Asians, blacks, Asians, Hispanics, women, I think I said Asians twice, against white supremacist men in the empire. It's a self-hatred, and it runs so deep. It's in our cultural language. It's embedded in it. And it's ubiquitous and it's everywhere. And what people see in this transgressive narrative, what we're shamed about, is this idea, what if we took the chains off? What if whites, what if Europeans, what if Americans took the chains off of ourselves, which had been self-imposed? What if we make a decision to think freely, act freely, to do what is best for ourselves, to take care of ourselves, to be proud of ourselves, to be proud of our children, to be proud of our ancestors, to be proud of who we are. What if we did that? That is what is electrifying. That is what excites people. When people see the edits set to hyper-pop music that are energetic, and they see grand displays, they see strength, they see glory, they see beauty, they see ambition, imagination, they see these things. And again, I understand that is not a perfect or even accurate representation of everything that was going on. It doesn't account for the atrocities. It doesn't account for the cruelty and those things that were done. But to celebrate for a moment the forward-thinking nature of those things, the optimism, the pride, it gives people a kick because we're so used to the exact opposite. That's the appeal. What it represents is, what if we went hard as fuck? That's what Hitler represents. What if white people went hard as fuck and we didn't have to pander? We didn't have to pander. We didn't have to make excuses. We didn't have to apologize. We didn't have to do all these rituals, humiliation rituals that we have to do. It wasn't refugees welcome. It wasn't we're so sorry. It wasn't the original sin of slavery. It wasn't our ancestors were evil. It wasn't, well, we're trying to be better and we're doing the work and we acknowledge we're on stolen land. It was, what if, fuck it, we're going hard. That's what it represents. And that's why young people are drawn to that. And I don't think that people should make that, I don't think that people like Piers should make that a sticking point. I think that's a big mistake. Because if you make that a shit test, disavow Hitler, you have to say Hitler isn't cool. He said, you need to listen to this old Jewish guy. You have to listen to Finkelstein or whatever. You have to listen to this guy talk about his mom and dad. People are going to say, you know what? We don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear another guest. I don't want to hear another foreigner, because that's all it is. That's what American history is. It's Columbus killed the natives, then we enslaved the blacks, then Hitler killed the Jews, then we were racist, and we're all pieces of shit, and we should all hate ourselves, and that's why we need to bring on the immigrants, because we deserve it, because we shouldn't exist, and we're all terrible. And if you're telling us that we have to repudiate, oh, you have to say Hitler's not cool, you can never make jokes and you can never say anything, and you need to feel shame and you need to make me feel your shame. You need to mean it when you're ashamed. People are going to say, F you, F off. I don't want to hear Ben Shapiro talk about the Holocaust. F you, go home. I'm not going to feel sorry. I'm not going to feel bad. And you want to know why? And everyone understands this. Our country is going to shit. Everyone knows it. That's the bottom line. Bigger than all of this, it's a very simple idea. The simplest, most fundamental form of the idea behind all of it is this. Everything is going to shit. We all know the way things used to be. We all know the way it used to be because we've seen the videos, and it's like a portal to another universe. You see these videos of LA, Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, New York, San Francisco in the 1950s, the 1940s, and we see what it was like, and we see what we could have had. And it's lost. It's gone. And everyone knows it. Everyone knows things have gotten worse. And we know exactly why. Because in 1968, MLK Jr. got shot and race riots destroyed all those cities. Detroit was the Paris of the Midwest. Now it's a dump. And then, after all the cities got turned into a dump and the whites fled, then they poured the immigrants in. And then for 50 years, we were subjected to wave after wave, unrelenting of immigrants that we did not desire, that are not making our country better. And that doesn't mean that they're horrible people. We don't need to say they're bad people, but they're people that are not improving the country. We all know that the types of things that we had qualitatively are different. I'll give you an example from the city of Chicago. My great uncle used to run security at Marshall Fields. Marshall Fields was a flagship department store in Chicago. It was basically like a World Heritage site. And every Christmas, they put up elaborate decorations and a tree and window displays. And people got dressed up when they went there. It was a big deal to go Christmas shopping at Marshall Fields. That's a time when people cared. That's a time when people cared about the customer and the quality of the experience. And there was a real commons, a real sense of pride in our public gatherings, our public spaces. And it was a big deal. People got dressed up and they went downtown like it was an event, and they looked at the beautiful decorations and they shopped. My great uncle ran security there, my great uncle Tony. And now you go to these stores and people are getting shot. There's no decorations. Nobody gives a shit. It's a free-for-all. You go to Macy's, you go to Marshall Fields, it looks like a flea market. And everybody in there is speaking a different language. And everybody in there is acting like it's a free-for-all. Kids running everywhere. It's a nightmare. These are the qualitative things that we're losing. That's our civilization. That's our society. That's the way things used to be. It's not about the technology. It's not about the GDP, whether you can assign a dollar amount to things. People say, well, the economy grew and we have TVs now, but we lost something qualitative. We lost something that cannot be measured, and we lost it because of diversity. We lost it because we gave up. We lost it because we blamed ourselves. We became guilty. We lost the standards. We started making excuses for everybody. This is the simplest form of the idea. We have lost something that is priceless, something that is not recoverable. We were cheated. It was our inheritance. Thousands of years of culture, thousands of years of cultural and genetic transmission, of wars and battles, of industry and intellectual pursuit gave us the civilization of the last century. And it's gone now. It's all gone. It has been destroyed, and it's never coming back. And it's that profound and deep sense of loss and alienation from our own home, from our own identity, from our own parents, from our own history. That is what is driving this. That's the problem. And it's implicit in Piers Morgan, his glib defense of mass migration, when he says, well, the curry is really good. The curry? The curry? You think the curry can replace the civilization that gave us Shakespeare and the Magna Carta? You think the curry replaces that? Replaces Lord Nelson? Replaces the Constitution of the United States? Replaces the explorers and the pioneers, the conquerors that settled North America, India that took over the entire world, that invented the steam engine and the railroad and the automobile? Curry? Ethnic food? You. And you want us to feel sorry now? You want us to apologize to some Jew selling a book? Well, you should read my book where I talk about my parents that died. Your parents? Why don't you go to Israel? There's no excuse anymore. What are you still doing here other than to bitch about our people and our civilization and our God and our ancestors? We're all sick of that. That's what it's about. That's the part of Hitler that no one wants to talk about. They want to talk about the 6 million. They want to talk about, well, what about this, that, and the other? That's the feeling. That's the feeling. That's the vibes. That's why it resonates with people in the 21st century. It's not because people are ideological national socialists necessarily. It's not because they read Mein Kampf and they're whipped up about Lebensraum and in the particular parochial, provincial politics of 1930s Germany. It's because of the feeling of we've lost everything and they want us to feel sorry. We've lost everything about who we are in our civilization, and they still want us to feel bad. They're still extracting, still taking. And people have had enough of that. And people are starting to say, what if? What if it was all a mistake? People are saying, what if everything in the last 80 years was a mistake because it's not working? What has it given us? Crime, chaos, dysfunction, insanity. I said it in Piers Morgan as a joke. I said, you have a knife problem. You have Aladdin. We, the West, Europeans, won with technological and military superiority, dominated the globe for 500 years, created the modern world. And now our prize is that people are going to get cut down in their own country by swords. Children are going to be raped by Muslims in their own country, by foreigners. You have these marauding Africans and Jamaicans and people from the Indies, people from Africa, people from the Middle East. They're going to be running around cutting people in half with swords and knives. And people think this is acceptable. You have a Muslim mayor that says, well, that's part and parcel of living in a city. That's the problem people have, the idea that any of this is acceptable, that any of this is part and parcel. We don't have a dignified civilization. You go out and it's a stench of drugs, it's graffiti, it's the constant state of fear, the menace of minorities in the streets. That's the problem people have. And the idea that we have to be okay with all of it. So I thought long and hard about it after the show. He said, so what is it that's cool about Hitler? And I watched some of the edits and I said, why do I like this? Why do I like this? What is this feeling that I like? Oh, it makes me feel proud. It makes me feel like there's possibilities. There's not this constant shaming from hostile interlopers that don't even like us to boot. Jewish people that in some ways inherently resent us. They say things like Europeans have anti-Semitism in their DNA, and they're shaming us. You don't even like us. I said in the interview, they're counting down the days until whites are a minority, and they're shaming us, telling us we should feel sorry, and they hate us, and we're listening to them. And it's no different from black people that say you need to feel sorry about slavery, and they hate us. This is the problem that people have. This is where my appeal comes from. This is why this stuff is resonating. Now, you don't like it. Maybe you don't like it. Maybe you don't want to hear that. Maybe you find that deeply problematic, but that's what it is. And that's true. And it gets to the central point, which I'll finally arrive at. Why do we say Hitler's cool and make jokes about this? Because we are destroying the secular religion of liberalism and the Holocaust, which go hand in glove. That's why. He asked me about the 6 million. To tell you the truth, I don't know how many Jews died during the Holocaust. I don't care. I don't care. And I'll say it's 300,000. I'll say it's 100 million because I want you to know that I don't care. I want you to know that I don't take it seriously. Every death is a tragedy. Every death in a genocide is a tragedy. But you have weaponized the Holocaust against me and my people. You've weaponized this atrocity against my civilization in order to further your own political objectives. And as long as you're doing that, it is my obligation to blaspheme your false secular religion. So I'll say it's 300,000 or 10 million. I'll say Hitler is cool. And he said, why do you say that? I said, this is why. This reaction, the histrionics, the freaking out, phoning the expert with his book saying, my mom and dad died during Stalin and the Holocaust, because I want you to know that I don't care. And I want you to get mad. And I want you to treat it like a blasphemy, because that is self-consciously and intentionally what it is. The Holocaust and Hitler and racism, all these words have no power over me. That's all they are, is words, denotating concepts. But these concepts have been poisonous. Hitler, the Holocaust, racism, white supremacy, white nationalism. These are words that have been weaponized against us, and they carry with them these ideas, which are that we don't deserve to have a homeland. These ideas that we shouldn't be proud of who we are, that we shouldn't stand up for our religion. And, you know, to the point of a lot of these people, Muslims are planting a flag in Europe. They're warriors. They are planting their flag in Europe. They're taking over neighborhoods in the UK. They're doing their call to prayer. They're taking up space, and they're loud, and they're proud, and they're daring people to try and fuck with them. And they're saying there's a lot of us. There's a lot of fighting age men, and we're ready and able to fight, and we're in your streets, and we're doing our prayer, and we dare you to do something about it. And what do Christians do? Acquiesce and tolerate and welcome and make excuses. And we do it, by the way, for Muslims. We do it for Jews too. And on a secular level, we do it for these non-white immigrants, Indians and Hispanics and others that come in that don't like us, that don't like our culture. And so when we say these words and this religion has no power, we're rejecting that idea that we don't deserve to have our own country, that we are not allowed to plant our flag, that we're not allowed to plant a flag for Christ and take up space as men, as fighting age men, and get out there and plant a flag and say, try and fuck with us. Muslims can do it. Don't you feel weak? Don't you feel weak when a bunch of Muslim thugs get in the streets in New York or in London? Big Muslim guys, street toughs, get out there, taking up space, and they set up shop, and they know it offends people. They know it's provocative, and they say, bring it on. And what do? In our own country that our ancestors fought for, in the land of Washington and Lincoln and Jefferson and Adams, in the land of Nelson and Edward, in these countries, and we let them do it. And it's these poisonous ideas, white supremacist, Hitler, Nazi, racist, white nationalist, where we say we would never defend, we would never stand against. And the same goes for the Jews that do it in their own special way, that do it in their own way in the smoky corridors of power. It's the same thing. So that's my response to this whole interview, the shaming, the guilt tripping. You need to be ashamed. You should feel sorry. You should feel guilty. But what about what you said? I apologize for nothing. I take nothing back. You want to expose me? Everybody supports it. Congratulations. You did your proper expose, and everybody stands with me, and nobody stands with you and your pussy hat and your empathetic kids and all your other nonsense. And you have to deal with that new reality. You don't have to like me. You can think I'm a jerk. You can think I'm irresponsible. You can think whatever you want about me. It's not about me. It's about what I am expressing. I am just the person that happens to be expressing it because I understand it. I have the brains to perceive it, I understand it, and I can articulate it. And I fought for 10 years to do that. I just happen to be the spokesperson. I just happen to be the vessel. So it's not about me. It's about this message. And like I said, you can like me or not, but that is the new reality that people are going to have to get used to. And that goes for Piers and Tucker. That goes for Piers and colorblind Tucker that says nothing's about race and nothing's about Jews. The new reality is, no, it's not about the economy. It's about our identity. It's not about the housing market and the job market. It's about who we are as a people. The Jews have peoplehood. The Muslims have peoplehood. And Christians and Europeans have peoplehood too. And I'm going to give it back to them. I'm going to give them permission. I'm going to tell them it's okay. We are people too. We have peoplehood too. We are a nation. We're Christians. We're Europeans. We're Romans. We have a right to plant a flag in our own country, in our own territory. That's the message. And the liberal universalism of either side. You know, Piers is more of a left-wing flavor. Tucker's more of a right-wing flavor. It's a false dialectic. They're two sides of the same coin. The real tidal wave is identity. So anyway, that's sort of my thoughts on the whole interview. I do get a little whipped up because of the whole, you know, and we're doing the interview and we're playing a game. We're playing a game. He's the court-appointed inquisitor. He's the interrogator. He's the cop. And that's why I said I don't mind it. I don't see it as an ambush because I knew that. And I'm being spunky and I'm being funny and I'm being amused by the whole thing. But I do feel very strongly about it. I repudiate the liberal guilt tripping. We have to reject it in its totality. And white people have to start being proud of who they are. Christians have to be proud of who they are. Americans have to be proud of who they are. We need to plant a flag. We need to defend what we stand for and who we are, as opposed to this values-based. What does it mean to be white? It means to be not racist. It means to be not sexist. It means to not be a misogynistic pig. Shut up. Our generation hates that. Generation Z hates all of that. So anyway, that was the Piers Morgan interview, but it was a lot of fun. I had a great time. I thought it was funny. A lot of good clips in there. And I think you'd be surprised how powerful some of the clips are. Like when he said, "How dare you? Why would you think you could make a joke about the Holocaust?" And I said, "Why? Is it too soon?" And everybody laughed. And people might say, "Well, that was a funny quip." No, it means it's working. Because for many years, if anyone made a Holocaust joke, you would say, the horror, you can't say that. And now everyone's laughing. Now people say, that's a good point, it's true. When they bring on the old British guy to say, Stalin killed my dad and Hitler killed my mom. And I say, I don't care. What are you talking about? This is ridiculous. It's the eye roll. Once people start to dismiss that, we live in a different country. So that's that. I think that's everything I have to say about it. Needless to say, I don't think it went the way he thought it would. He was very angry throughout the interview. He was expecting me to backpedal and backtrack. And when I refused to apologize or to argue with myself or to let him shame me, he had nowhere to go with it. And I think he got increasingly frustrated. And towards the end, it was just like a complete meltdown. Towards the end of it, he's saying, well, you're a virgin. So, oh, wow, so you're just a real sexist virgin. And it just turned into a complete meltdown at the end because he couldn't get the rest of it past the goalie. So I was happy with it. I think that I don't think it went the way he thought it would, which I liked. I like to wipe the smirk off his face because I knew that going into it, he was going to be very impressed with himself. And I'm sure in his mind, he was thinking, all right, hold my beer, watch this. I'm going to be the one that's finally going to put the screws in this kid, and I'm going to... And it was a rude awakening. In that moment, he realized this is a new world. This is a new country. That doesn't work anymore. That's over now. So, and I'm happy to report that. But we're going to move on. You know, I don't know that we're going to have time for this report from the NCRI. I might save that for tomorrow. Well, you know, we got a lot of viewers. I'll just do it tonight. We got 57,000 people watching, so I'll just do it tonight. And then we'll get on into our super chats later. So our second big story after the Piers Morgan, and so that was a pretty good monologue. I'm glad I didn't even see the viewership, but I'm glad we have a big audience tonight for that kick-ass monologue. But I do want to move on. So at the same time that I'm on Piers Morgan, I get a whole other Matrix attack. And I'll set the stage for it. So last week, out of a clear blue sky, Elon Musk goes on Twitter and says that I'm a Fed. That's the tweet. Elon says he is a Fed. And so he's saying that I'm a federal informant, operative. I'm an asset of some variety. Elon Musk last week says Nick Fuentes is a Fed. And I reply and I say ratio. and I ratio him. I get 100,000 likes on the tweet. He gets 10,000 likes. And I post a screenshot of that. Everyone is posting the screenshot. Elon Musk has 300 million followers on Twitter. I have 1 million. He calls me a Fed, the richest man in the world, one of the most famous men in the world, most followers on the platform, calls me a Fed. And I ratio him 10-1. And I said, well, that sort of speaks for itself. So keep in mind, there's one attack, the richest man in the world calling me a Fed. And it's not the first time. Candace Owens piles on as well. I ratio him. Today, this is the news. This is our second story. A think tank called the Network Contagion Research Institute, they publish a brand new report with original research, and they say that that ratio was fake. They say it was botted by bot farms from Nigeria and India and third world countries. So they said the ratio was fake. Now, I want to get into that report. We're going to work through the report, and we're going to talk about the organization that put it out. But first, I want to lay out the timeline, which is, think of this. It's a 1-2 punch. So first, Elon, one of the richest, most famous people in the entire world, calls me a Fed, which is totally unfair because I'm a live streamer. I have 1 million followers. He's got 300 million. He's got a net worth of $300 billion. He's friends with the president. I'm like a live streamer on Rumble. I'm not even on YouTube. I don't have a check mark on Twitter. And he's going out to his audience of millions. Oh, that guy's a Fed. No evidence, no proof. Makes a charge. The only thing I can do to defend myself is to reply and ratio and say, look, people don't agree with you. So then they come back in and say, oh, well, the ratios are fake too. So it's a two-pronged attack. You're a Fed and you're being artificially promoted. You're working with the government and you're botting all your engagement. So it's a layered matrix attack. I ratioed you. Well, the ratio's fake. So this is the report. This is from the New York Post. It's an exclusive in the New York Post. It says, quote, white supremacist Nick Fuentes doesn't seem to mind benefiting from bot farms in Pakistan, India, and Nigeria promoting his content, the Post has learned. A new analysis of the Holocaust-denying firebrand's tweets shows they are boosted online by a foreign army of bots, mostly originating in countries which want to destabilize the United States. Nigeria wants to destabilize. India wants to destabilize the United States. Fuentes' sudden apparent surge in popularity over the last year is faked based on algorithmic amplification powered by bot farms, according to Network Contagion Research Institute, a nonprofit that studies extremism on the internet. Fuentes is a Holocaust denier who describes Zionist Jews as enemies of the conservative movement. After the story published, Fuentes sent an abusive response not suitable to be printed in the Post. The NCRI report is gaining momentum in the online tech community, where one expert says that Fuentes is leading a bot army to go after Trump's Make America Great Again movement. Now, we're going to get into the actual report and then the organization that put it out. But first, let's talk about this article. So this article is from the New York Post, okay? The New York Post got the exclusive on this research. And what is the New York Post? Because they got the research before anybody. If you Google it, this is a NY Post exclusive. So the NCRI gave this to them, and they got first dibs. And NY Post puts out the story. NY Post is owned by News Corp, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch. Okay? Rupert Murdoch is a close personal friend of Benjamin Netanyahu. Did you know that? When Netanyahu visits London, it is Rupert Murdoch's condo that he stays in. Rupert Murdoch was a donor to Bibi Netanyahu's re-election campaign a few years ago after Netanyahu was kicked out of office. Rupert Murdoch is a virulent Zionist and supporter of Israel. As a consequence, all these properties, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, they're all pro-Israel. Now, wouldn't you know, how did Piers Morgan get his start in media? Well, he got it at a Rupert Murdoch-owned publication in London, where Piers Morgan was at for a stint of around 10 years. Did you know that Piers Morgan's show, Uncensored, on News TV, came from a Murdoch-owned property? Piers Morgan Uncensored, that show debuted on a Murdoch-owned channel. Now, Piers Morgan would say, well, my show is independent. And that's true. Earlier this year, Piers Morgan took his show independent. It's no longer on News TV. Do you know that Rupert Murdoch is an investor in the now independent show? He has a commercial stake in the quote-unquote independent venture. It's funny how this works. So before we even get into the actual evidence or lack thereof, let's rewind. Piers Morgan starts his show with a hit piece from the Free Press, which is run by Barry Weiss, this Israeli operative who got bought out by David Ellison, another pro-Israel operative. Piers Morgan himself is with Rupert Murdoch. And the New York Post is owned by Rupert Murdoch also. They got the exclusive on this report. And what do they write? Let's talk about the piece. So they call me a white supremacist, a Holocaust denier. I've described Zionist Jews as enemies of the conservative movement. So it's loaded up with this kind of language, and they specifically say, these are the claims made by the piece. They say that my popularity is fake. They don't say allegedly, they say it's fake. It's based on algorithmic amplification powered by bot farms. That's just an assertion, not allegedly, not speculated. They say all his popularity is fake. It's coming from bot farms. And they say bot farms in countries that want to destabilize America. And those countries are Nigeria, India, and Pakistan. Now, let's say for the sake of argument that's true. Those are not countries that destabilize the United States. The countries that want to destabilize America are China, Russia, Iran, Cuba, not Nigeria, not India. Does Nigeria even have an intelligence service? It's sort of an oxymoron. Does India, does Pakistan, are they under, but this is how they want to paint it. The Holocaust-denying firebrand who hates Jews, he's not popular at all. It's all fake by bot farms and America's enemies. Brought to you by Rupert Murdoch. Brought to you by the Matrix Times, by the Matrix Post, by the New York Post, okay? Now, that's the story, but I want to get into the report, and I'll read from the report specifically. This is what it says. This is from the executive summary of that report. This is from the Network Contagion Research Institute. It says, quote, Fuentes received dramatically higher early retweet velocity than any comparator, including Elon Musk, the platform's most followed user. Within the critical first 30 minutes, Fuentes routinely outperformed accounts with 10 to 100 times more followers. So their evidence is that I get more retweets in the first 30 minutes after I post something. That I have fans. I get more retweets, therefore it's all fake. It goes on. It says 92% of repeat early retweeters were anonymous. And by anonymous, it means they don't use their real name or photo or location, and they don't have contact information. So in other words, if someone retweets a post and they don't have their real name, real face, their email, and their real address, it's an anonymous bot. They say 92% of the repeat early retweeters were anonymous, and the majority are openly or functionally single-purpose Groyper America First accounts whose primary activity is boosting Nick Fuentes and related fringe extremist messaging. And I read the entire report. It's like 20 pages. And that's it. That's literally the argument. Their evidence that all of my popularity is fake. And by the way, I am one of the biggest live streamers on Rumble by far. Huge live audience, huge replay audience. My clips go viral on Instagram every week. Millions of views, millions of likes. My tweets get millions of impressions, maybe 30, 50 million impressions per week. And I am widely talked about. And I don't know if you guys experience this, but I hear it from people I know. They say, oh, my old high school friends are sending your clips in a group chat. Oh, the people at my gym are playing your clips. Oh, I'm driving and I went into a parking lot and someone was playing your video sitting in their car in the parking lot. I hear this all the time and I get recognized everywhere. Every time I leave the house, it's like a 80% chance I get recognized. At the airport, at a restaurant, you know, in LA, in New York, everywhere I go, it's been like this, just anecdotally. This report says that's all fake. The New York Post says all the popularity's fake. All of that's fake. Instagram, Rumble, Twitter, the anecdotal stuff, it's all fake. And it's all being run by bot farms in countries that hate America. And their evidence for this is that I get a lot of retweets. Their evidence is that I have fans that retweet my content when I tweet it. Here's an alternative theory. They have notifications on. Here's an alternate theory. I have fans. Do you know how the internet works? Why might I have more retweets than Elon Musk? Well, let's see. Elon tweets about 10,000 times every day. Go on his Twitter. Does this guy even run Tesla anymore? Does he even have a job? Because all I see him doing is tweeting. He's tweeting 1,000 times every day. Of course he doesn't get a lot of retweets. He replies 1,000 times a day. And it's usually just like, yup, LOL, agreed. Most of his tweets are just emojis or one or two words. So that's just how the internet works. Are you surprised that an internet live streamer with a cult-like following in politics has a more rabid and loyal following than some businessman that tweets 10,000 times per day, mostly inane nonsense, jacking himself off? It would go without saying. And by the way, I've been banned from everything. My audience follows me everywhere. When I got banned on YouTube, my audience followed me to DLive. When I got banned on DLive, they followed me onto Cozy. I didn't get banned on Cozy. When I got led onto Rumble, they followed me to Rumble. I was banned on Twitter for 3 years. When I came back, I got 300,000 followers in a month because my fans are extremely loyal. It's a cult-like following. And I say cult-like like a movie. Like Pulp Fiction has a cult-like following. I have a very strong, very fanatical base of supporters, obviously. Their evidence that it's a foreign bot farm is I get a lot of retweets because I have fans that make accounts and retweet my posts. I post maybe once, sometimes 3 times per day, and my fans retweet it, as well as other content similar to mine. And they claim that's a bot farm in Russia trying to destroy America, and it's all fake. Okay. So that's the evidence. The evidence is I get retweets in the first 30 minutes. Now let's talk about the organization pushing the report, because it's obvious what they're trying to do. This is all delegitimizing, discrediting. It's all part of a full spectrum attack. They attack me in every single way. When I didn't vote for Trump, they said I was a Democrat. When I criticized Israel, they said I was a Jew hater. When I criticized black people, they say I'm a racist. When I'm at January 6th, they say I'm a Fed. Elon calls me a Fed. And then when I ratio him, they say, well, the engagement's all fake. It's just a full spectrum attack like they do with Trump. Your crowd sizes aren't as big as you say they are. It's Russian hacking. You're not a real conservative. You're secretly in the pocket for Hillary Clinton. It's the same playbook. The full spectrum attack. Let's talk about where it originates, because this is important too. So this comes from the Network Contagion Research Institute, and that sounds very official. Network Contagion Research Institute, that sounds like an official acronym. You might remember them. This is the group that put out the report in the spring that says that Christ is King is anti-Semitic. Remember that? Do you remember back in spring when there was a research paper going around saying that Christian fundamentalists were weaponizing Christ as King to push anti-Semitism? This is the same people that did that. And I'll refresh your memory. It's founded by a man named Joel Finkelstein. His other employees, their names are Mendel Zecker, Zach Dahlberg, Alex Goldenberg, and Danit Finkelstein. This is the staff. This is the staff at Network Contagion Research Institute, which says all my engagement is fake. Finkelstein, Mendel Zecker, Dahlberg, Goldenberg, and Finkelstein again. Their partner organizations are the United Nations, the ADL, George Soros Open Society Foundation, and the Charles Koch Network. I'm not making that up. That's on their website. So Joel Finkelstein is the founder, and the partners are Soros Open Society, the ADL, and the UN. That is who has brought to you the totally unbiased, objective report that all my popularity is fake. Well, I guess the case is closed, right? Well, that settles that. The ADL and the United Nations and George Soros and Joel Finkelstein, a former partner of the ADL, they have determined that I'm not popular at all, and all my engagement is fake, and it's all bot farms, and none of that is real, and everyone still loves Israel. Oh, okay, well, case closed. Enough said. It gets better. I want to read to you a report about this organization because there's more to the story. This is a report from Breakthrough News. It's actually a left-wing source, and they were also attacked by this same research institute because they were critical of Israel also. This is what they had to say. It says, quote, NCRI is based out of Rutgers Center for Critical Intelligence Studies, or CCIS, which has long been regarded as a front for the CIA. Okay? NCRI, this is the group that put out the paper. They are based at Rutgers, specifically their Center for Critical Intelligence Studies, and that's a front for the CIA. During the Cold War, get a load of this, the CIA conducted mind control experiments on Hungarian immigrants at Rutgers as part of its MKUltra program. So NCRI is based out of Rutgers, so is MKUltra, literally. The CIA also funded research at Rutgers and even stole research from students to use against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The CIA and other government agencies openly recruit out of Rutgers. Job listings on the CCIS website show a litany of jobs for weapons manufacturers and the U.S. national security state. CCIS also receives grants from the Defense Intelligence Agency and has classes taught by the FBI and CIA agents. Okay? So this research institute, the people that are telling you that it's all a bot farm, here's our evidence that America's enemies are bot farming Nick Fuentes' Twitter. It's the ADL, Soros, and the UN. It's run by a former ADL fellow named Joel Finkelstein. And they operate out of Rutgers CCIS, Center for Critical Intelligence. And this Center for Critical Intelligence Studies, they're offering their students jobs as weapons manufacturers in the national security state. They contract with the Defense Intelligence Agency. They're running with the CIA and the FBI. This is who's pushing this report out. But wait, there's more. It gets better. The NCRI itself advises the Department of Homeland Security on how to identify threats, and its research is used and cited by government law enforcement agencies. NCRI also has ties to Israel. Its founder, Joel Finkelstein, was a fellow at the ADL, for example. One of its fellows, Alex Goldenberg, is the director of national intelligence at Narrowvance, a shadowy company owned by other NCRI founder Adam Sohn. The fact that there is crossover between their nonprofit research institute and this for-profit cyber intelligence firm makes it likely that it is all just one operation, which uses a private company for security contracts and a nonprofit side for innocuous partnerships with the UN and the ADL. The article goes on. It says in 2022, the NCRI got a fifth of its funding from the Israel on Campus Coalition. In 2022, it got a fifth of its funding from Israel on Campus. Israel on Campus operates in the United States, but takes direction from the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs. They also received donations from a group called Hetz for Israel, which Finkelstein is also a board member of as well. Joel Finkelstein and Adam Sohn, the co-founders, were summoned to the Israeli Knesset to report their findings to Israeli legislators at the Israeli-American Jewry Relations Caucus, an entire caucus dedicated to coordinating activities between Israel and Jews in America. Okay? This is who is telling everybody that I'm fake. So all of that is real. MK Ultra, Rutgers, the DIA, the DHS, the FBI, the CIA, the Knesset, Israel on Campus, Joel Finkelstein, that's all real. These are the good guys telling the truth. These are the honest brokers telling the truth with data and research. They don't have an agenda. They're being objective. That's all authentic and organic. The 27-year-old live streamer on rumble.com, that's the fake, inorganic, astroturf narrative. Yeah, okay. And it's like I said at the very beginning, and Elon Musk started it out. So think about all the things that have happened today. Elon Musk calls me a Fed. I ratio him, and I get attacked by this shadowy research firm connected to U.S. and Israeli intelligence saying everything is fake. Then I go on Piers Morgan, a Rupert Murdoch property, and he's going to try and attack me on the Holocaust and Hitler, and you're a racist. Do you see what's going on here? Full spectrum matrix attack. And it's like I said throughout the whole year, this is what they do. When my message gets big and popular, when my show becomes larger than ever, this is when they start to play dirty. And I said this after Tucker Carlson specifically. I said, watch. After I blow up on Tucker Carlson, I'm just waiting for the next shoe to drop. I said the next step is they're going to come at me with some coordinated bullshit. They're either going to kill me or it's going to be some narrative. I said, because that is the playbook. They can't win the argument. They never tell me I'm wrong. So they have to go and say, well, the audience is fake and you're fake. Your message is fake and it's not popular and you're not who you say you are. That's the strategy. And there's sort of a rich irony in there as well, which is I'm being called the Fed by Elon Musk, who is a defense contractor in his own right. What do you think SpaceX is? SpaceX, their bread and butter, is putting Starlink into outer space. And Starlink is the secret weapon of the U.S. military. You're a defense contractor. When Elon Musk brought Doge into the White House, do you think it's a coincidence that all those people came from Palantir? Elon brought Doge into the White House, and those were all PayPal Mafia people. Those were a lot of Palantir people, Anduril people, OpenAI people, and those people brought Palantir with them. That's why at the Education Department, at the Treasury Department, at the Social Security Administration, they all now use Palantir because Elon brought his personnel in, specifically in the Department of War, And now it's all PayPal mafia types running the show there, giving the government contracts to Elon and his constellation of tech companies. Andreessen Horowitz and Palmer Luckey and Thiel and David Sachs and Musk. So it's a little rich. Elon Musk, number one defense contractor, number one spook, Palantir and Doge spook, calling me the Fed. That's ironic enough. Then I ratio this, I defeat the charge, and who comes in to take the wind out of my sails and declare the ratio fake? The literal feds. Rutgers University, aka MK Ultra headquarters, prospective weapons manufacturers, and future national security state employees are doing research on how none of my audience is real as they go to class taught by the CIA and the FBI and the reports constructed by the ADL and George Soros. And that's the Matrix. And that's the world that we live in. I had somebody DM me today. They said, so what's this report about? I said, it looks like a cutout for the ADL. He's like, oh my gosh, you're right. Of course I'm right. It's on their website. You go to their website. It says, our proud partners, Open Society, ADL, Koch brothers, UN. It sounds like you're making it up, but that's what it is. So this is the state of the play. And I don't know what's going to come next. The problem is I just won't quit. The problem is they're pulling out all the stops and none of the usual stuff is working. The rigmarole with Piers Morgan today, the Fed accusation. And by the way, this is the last thing I'll say. Even on the Fed accusation, where did that come from? Do you want to know the exact and precise moment when people started calling me a Fed? I'll tell you. It was when Max Blumenthal's wife wrote an article to that effect in the Gray Zone in 2023. And many of you know this story already. But that is the first time people really started loudly and aggressively calling me a Fed. The charge was led by Anya Parampil, Max Blumenthal's wife, at the Gray Zone. Do you know that Tucker Carlson collaborated on that hit piece? Tucker Carlson called up my dear friend Michelle Malkin and said, what do you know about Nick? What do you know about Nick and Kanye? What do you know about Nick and Trump? What do you know about this? He contributed to the hit piece. And once they published this hit piece in the Gray Zone, by the way, Max Blumenthal, look up his father. Max Blumenthal, everyone thinks he's based. He attacked David Irving for the SPLC. And his father, Sidney Blumenthal, was an intelligence mercenary for the Clintons. Sidney Blumenthal was like a Jeffrey Epstein type figure. He was like an intelligence mercenary. He ran his own private intelligence outfit for the Clinton family, for Bill and Hillary Clinton. That's Max Blumenthal's father, okay? Max Blumenthal is tight with Russia. He's tight with China. He's tight with Iran. Used to be tight with the SPLC. Hated David Irving. And it's Blumenthal's wife calling me a Fed. After they published the piece, they started to pay people to push it on Influenceable. They put up $100,000 for people to post the link to the article with the hashtag FedFuentes. And the whole thing was retaliation because I made Joe Kent lose his congressional race in 22. Joe Kent was a dear friend of Tucker Carlson. Joe Kent is a CIA officer, and I campaigned against him in 22. And because I made Joe Kent lose his race, Tucker was so enraged that he called up his other dear friend Blumenthal, and they put out the hit on me to destroy my reputation. So Joe Kent is in the CIA. Tucker Carlson's dad ran Voice of America for the CIA, and Tucker is tight with Hungary and Russia. Max Blumenthal's dad, Sidney Blumenthal, ran an intelligence outfit for Bill and Hillary Clinton. He was in the SPLC, and he's tight with Russia, Iran, and China. They're all calling me a Fed. Now Elon Musk, PayPal Mafia, is calling me a Fed. Tucker Carlson's father was also tight with Rupert Murdoch, employer of Piers, owner of New York Post, pushing this research from the Israeli Intelligence CIA Research Institute, run out of MK Ultra headquarters. If you want to go really deep, that is the Matrix. These are the people calling me the spook. That's who's calling me the spook. And if you want to go one better, we could talk about Candace Owens. Candace Owens dogpiled. Elon Musk called me a Fed. She jumped in too. Who is her father-in-law? Her father-in-law is named Lord Farmer. He runs the Organization for Cooperation Between Jews and Christians in the UK, major booster for the Tories. And she was introduced to her husband by the jeweler of the British royal family. The family that makes the jewels for the literal British crown. That guy, the heir to that family, he's the one that introduced Candace Owens and her husband, son of Lord Farmer from the British House of... These are the people calling me this, but I'm the fake one. That's why they have to fight so hard against me. You want to know why everyone lies about me? You want to know why everyone's attacking me all the time with everything you can think of? That's why. So that's that. But we're going to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. I'm running out of steam. It's been a long day. Piers Morgan, long show. Matrix attack. One battle after another. Piers Morgan, hit piece. Fending off attacks. So that's that. We're going to move on. We'll take a look at the super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this. Let me know what you think. How did I do? Did I win? Did I win the debate?
Did you win the debate? All right. Reminds me of that famous Russell Westbrook quote when he's asked that question by the reporter and says, "Hey, Russ, did you guys just lose tonight, or did the other team really win?" Like, you get what I'm saying? Where it's like, did you win, or did the other team just lose? Did Nick win, or did Pierce just perform so terrible and childish as a quote-unquote journalist? I think Nick summed it up pretty well when he said, "You're a tabloid journalist." In the interview, I think Nick summed it up pretty well there. Piers Morgan's an embarrassment. There's so many embarrassments on so many levels of that interview. You know, a lot of people were offended by, him going low and bringing up his dad. That's one aspect of it. But also, just here you have a Catholic man, a grown Catholic man, a 60-year-old Catholic man making fun of a 27-year-old who I'm sure has access to a lot more women than Piers Morgan had access to at 27. I'd be willing to bet everything on that. But because he has the dick discipline and commitment to his religion, he's decided to not indulge. That was a big problem for me. And perhaps it's because I'm personalizing it. Perhaps it's based on my own bias. And let me kind of tell you a little bit about that. As far as I think that we grow up in America with this culture and this society, we groom sex addicts. We groom sex addicts, at least growing up specifically in Black culture. If you grow up in the hip hop culture and others as well, I would have to say, because even think about when you consider marketing, what is something that you always hear? Sex sells, right? People want to make things sexy. When I look around and I'm looking at the pool right here, it's a cloudy day, but in Miami, I'm looking at the pool right here. Normally when I'm walking by the bathroom or I'm walking, chilling by the pool, you see nothing but thongs in a family pool. There's been a agenda for a very long time to overly stimulate Americans when it comes to sex. This is why porn is such a big deal. And when I look at Nick as somebody that's grown up in this culture that I believe that has created sex addicts, I think the majority of us are sex addicts. I guess throw me in there as well. It's created this mindset where that's the only thing that you focus on. I see it all the time with a lot of my friends. Like I said, I put myself in that as well. But with my friends, where you just see adults, and perhaps it was the case in other situations as well, or other generations. But when I'm 38 years old right now, and the things that my friends are still talking about, or some of them, not all of them, obviously, but it's like, oh no, there's an addiction here. Like, initially we thought that we would just grow out of it and ultimately, you know, settle down and get married. No, it's not that. It's based on this nurture, not nature, I don't believe, but nurture of overly stimulating us with sex. And going back to the point that I was initially making before I went on the tangent, this is what Piers Morgan decides to make fun of and poke at Nick Fuentes for. I wish that I had better dick discipline. I really do. 100%. I wish that our culture perhaps had a lot more dick discipline. I wish that our culture was more closer to what Nick is in deciding to abstain from sex rather than what we typically have. Think about a lot of the issues that we have in our communities. But neither here nor there. Like I said, that was one that just stood out to me. Maybe it doesn't offend everybody else as much as it offended me, but it was just childish. It's childish. Piers Morgan, have you ever seen a tampon? You been that close to a woman? Do you think that's your issue? Why you feel the way that you feel about women because you've never been laid? It's like, bro, it almost reminds me of, and I said it on this live. By the way, we did a 7-hour review of this live between Piers and Nick. We watched it live and went through it and reviewed it then. And I even gave a little bit of my feedback after that yesterday. But then today, BK and I, from 8 to 3 o'clock, all we did was just unpack that live from 8 to 3 o'clock. So y'all feel free to check that out as well. I don't know if you want to sit there for 7 hours, especially after hearing this and hearing me talk now. But yeah, it's available. Just letting you know. And it reminds me of Nick is almost speaking from a standpoint where he's not compromised yet. He's not compromised on the power of the pussy, right? He's not compromised. It's almost, you know, how we talk about with AIPAC and the lobbyists influencing a lot of our politicians. Like, do you take money from AIPAC? Do you take money from AIPAC? It's almost like, have you ever been laid? Have you ever been? Yeah, Nick is speaking from a standpoint where he's not completely simping out like Nick or a lot of others of us that get a little bit of sex, and then now you're consumed with it and you're adjusting everything in your life to just satisfy that urge, to satisfy that lust. So it's almost like Nick is willing to speak out on a lot of these things, perhaps because he hasn't gotten laid, as Piers like to say. Perhaps Nick is seeing this with a clearer viewpoint and more aligned with a viewpoint that is conducive to having more successful relationships that are going to last a long time, and just align with us being in a better space overall in society with our American culture and perhaps humanity overall. So that was definitely a sticking point for me, where I just looked at Piers like, what a clown, bro. And what's so funny about it is, and I said this on the live as well, guys that get a lot of women actually respect a guy like Nick Fuentes who has the discipline to not act on those urges. Those urges get us in a lot of trouble. When you look at the history of the world, those urges have destroyed empires. Look at Helen of Troy. Case in point, Helen of Troy. This has happened over and over and over. It's happened to a lot of our presidents. Bill Clinton. You know what I mean? If these Epstein files come out, perhaps a lot more. So for Nick to have the discipline to not engage in that, that's actually a positive. But let me get back to whether or not Nick won. Nick won. If you had to say there was a winner and a loser, Nick won. The reason why I'm hesitant is because when I looked at the comments under the interview, it was literally, I didn't see one comment that was pro Piers Morgan. Everything was just based, you know how it goes. Nothing wrong with that, perhaps, but one challenge that I think Nick is going to have is he's surrounded by people that I don't want to say are yes men, because some are definitely yes men, but he's surrounded by people because he does such a good job in tapping into people's emotions and speaking for people. And because we've lacked that perhaps so much so far for such a long time in our society, that's why Trump became so big and people followed him so passionately and became such fanatics of him. And when you become a fanatic of somebody, you're less likely to have a certain amount of constructive criticism for them. So when I looked at all those comments pro Nick Fuentes and Nick won, he wiped the floor with Piers, and all, that's not what I felt when I was watching the interview. And Nick can jump on and declare he's a winner and all this other stuff. He can jump on and declare all those things, but I believe that Nick deep down, even though I'm sure he believes that he won, I would be willing to bet a whole lot of money that Nick also believes in his heart that he could have performed a lot better. That was not his best performance. He got caught up emotionally when Piers started off the show referencing his dad, just different things throughout the show. He didn't explain much context. He would just agree. I don't know if that was the plan or the strategy when Piers threw something out there like, oh, so you're racist. Yeah. Oh, you believe that all black people should be thrown in jail. Yeah. And then he went on to explain what he actually means by it, by saying that, we have an issue with black crime in America. It's part of the culture. It's something that impacts him living outside of Chicago. Obviously, you're calling Chicago Chirac. That's not by accident. But Piers almost gave him that opportunity, because if Piers didn't elaborate on it, Nick pretty much would have, the term hang himself, like maybe he didn't care about, being labeled as those things. But in my opinion, even if he does not care about being labeled as those things, I think he misses out when he's not giving proper context. He misses out on a large following. Now, he may not care about this following. He may only be trying to appeal to his base of, disaffected white young men. Cool. He may only be trying to push for white Christian nationalism. Cool. If that ever changes, though, and he wants other people to support him, they first got to hear your voice. And just like Nick Fuentes is aware that when he uses certain rhetoric, when he says the N-word, a lot of people are going to be like, yo, my white boy said the N-word. It's going to empower people, make them feel real good about it for whatever reason. Just like he appeals to his base from an emotional standpoint, I would assume, just my opinion, that he also understands that you also may turn off a whole bunch of people with certain rhetoric to where they never even get to hear the things that you're saying. Now, Nick may not be feeling this currently, but I've heard him on previous shows, perhaps y'all have as well, where he says like, hey, I'm willing to work with all different types of people. Black person, it's more so, if you're focused on this mission, if you're aligned with America First, if you're aligned with these things, and I'm with you too, you can join the movement. But then every once in a while, more often now than what it seemed like he was moving in the direction of, but now it seems like he feels like he has to reconnect over and over with his base, and that perhaps they think that I'm losing them, or they're losing. We're not aligned if I don't continue to use this racist rhetoric, because I don't even think he's being racist. I think he's just using it to appeal, but maybe it is. The rhetoric could be racist. Cool. I think that he's missing out on a whole lot of people that would appreciate his message. There's been a lot of people that I've exposed to Nick Fuentes in my family and friend group who, if I didn't tell them like, yo, give it a chance, take a listen at him, let me play this clip for you. Let me play this full clip for you, not just a 30-second bit or a 10-second bit. And they look at it and they like, yo, I rock with Nick. I hear him out. I don't like the racist stuff. I don't like they'll say racist because it's more so just something that we throw out there as a label with everything. Somebody says the N-word. Does that mean that they're racist? I don't know. Depends, I guess. You know what I mean? So those people, like a lot of other people, would be aligning with Nick, not based on his emotional appeal, but they're aligning with him based on logic. Those are people that you need in your movement, not just the people that you appeal to on an emotional level because they're frustrated and they're angry and they've been disaffected and America hasn't been serving them and they had the finger pointed at them to blame for all the black people's problems and everybody else's problems. We get all that. I get all that. But you also, I think it would benefit tremendously from having another group of people that simply aligns with you from a logical standpoint. Now, I'm not saying that only the black people are the only going to be the ones that think about it from a logical standpoint and all the white people are just emotional. I'm not saying that. Perhaps there's some white people in this category that I'm describing as well, but it's people that hear the rhetoric that he uses, and of course there's white people in that category, I shouldn't say perhaps, but people will hear the rhetoric and not even be able to hear the message. When we were doing the live stream, somebody commented and said, well, how do you feel about Nick saying that black people should be jailed? And then as a black person, and I'm like, well, he did continue to explain it, even though Piers kind of walked him through it. I don't know if Piers did that on purpose or not. I would expect not to, but then Nick explained it. He said, well, I'm talking about black people that commit crimes. And him and Piers had a little moment there. And so, but the person that I was talking to, when I said, well, he did explain it, he said, no, he didn't explain it. He just said it. And I'm like, bro, we just reviewed it and talked about it. Like, what do you mean? He just explained it. Then later on, he came out and said, well, he did explain it, but yeah, I still just only believe the first thing that he said. And it's like, bro, you get what I mean? This is the distraction that a lot of this rhetoric can cause. So Nick may not care, but it may be very beneficial for him in a lot of different ways if his game is the influence game and if he wants to truly unite people based on his principles. Now, if he's only here to work with the whatever group he wants to work with and he doesn't want to expand his reach to others, to each their own. But these are just some of the things that I'm thinking about as I'm reviewing the interview in my mind. Now, let me get to a couple of these notes. And like I said, it's been a long day. So that's why this video is getting to y'all when it's getting to y'all, because we spent so much time on live. But overall, so, and another thing, you know what stood out about that entire interview? I don't know if Gaza was even brought up. I don't know if the word Gaza was even used. I don't know if Palestinians, maybe once or twice, did they really spend a significant amount of time talking about it? And I don't want to say that I'm relieved to hear Nick, get back to calling out Jewish people in this current live that you guys are watching. But some questions did come up while I was watching it. At first, I was just like, okay, Piers Morgan, he's scared to talk about Israel. He's scared to talk about Palestine. He's scared to talk about the ethnic cleansing that created the state of Israel and the current genocide that we're seeing going on right now. He's scared to say those things. But then I was starting to look at, wait, why didn't Nick bring it up? And a lot of people in the comments, they were saying, well, Piers is the interviewer. He's the one that didn't bring it up, so Nick didn't bring it up. This is one of those areas that I'm saying I believe that Nick can go back and improve on. Nick, you can control the narrative. You can make sure that you make Piers look like an idiot for not bringing up the most relevant topic that you're known for, that you're canceled for. We say it all the time. You're not canceled because of anything that you said about black people. Like, let these liberals like Piers try to act like that's the issue. This is what Malcolm X was talking about, and I said it yesterday, with the wolf and the sheep. These conservatives, they're seen as the wolf. Okay, I know the wolf is trying to eat me, so it is what it is. And that's just bear with me on the point. He said the Democrats, meanwhile, and he's talking about the politicians. The Democrats, on the other end, they're the foxes. They're going to smile in your face, but then tear you apart viciously. That's what typically happens. So a lot of these white liberals, they will get on this moral high ground and try to present certain things and present Nick a certain type of way and make him out to be a certain thing. They do not care. So they'll always talk about, well, you said this about black people. They don't give a damn about black people. Nick Fuentes was not canceled and not allowed to have a bank account or a PayPal or be on these platforms because of anything that he said about black people. But they always try to put that at the forefront of every single conversation to get black people on board. I did not know that we were so important. And the truth is that we're not, but they just use that to then build a narrative, to build a story, to build this brand that they want to create of him, that, oh, because he feels this way about black people, now when Jewish people or Israeli first Zionist people complain about Nick Fuentes, now it's not just about us. It's not about him, just what he says to us. Look what he says to black people. Look what he says about women. Meanwhile, black people, we sitting here like, bro, we see what y'all doing. Like, stop trying to use us to prove why you should cancel somebody, because you're not canceling them because of anything that they said about us. You're canceling them because he has the courage to speak out about Israel. He has the courage to call it a genocide. He has the courage to go above and beyond with Tucker, with Candace, with Piers Morgan, all of a sudden changed his tune on, and them just saying that it's an Israel issue. He goes above and beyond and says, no, this is an issue with Jewish people overall as far as the culture. I mean, here you got a group of people that identify as the chosen people. You got a group of people that just took a bunch of people's land based on the writings in a scripture. And it's so funny that Pierce, in the interview, when you look at it, he'll call out the fact that Nick, when Nick said about the Bible and certain things, I think they were talking about women and whether or not they should have a vote. And Nick said, well, there's no women priest. And Pierce's response was, wait, you believe everything word for word in the Bible? And Nick's response was, I mean, it's inspired by God. So Piers Morgan was shaming that aspect of it, but I wonder if he has the same energy when it comes to the claim of land that the Israelis, the Jewish people, the Ashkenazis, the Europeans, when they're trying to prove that this is their land. I wonder if Pierce has that same energy when they're referencing books that are discussing things from 3,000 years ago, guaranteeing a group of people some land, or God promising them some land, whatever it says. I wonder if Piers Morgan has that same energy. This is the bullshit that comes with a lot of these conversations. This is what happens with a lot of these conversations. So let me get to the notes real quick. Let me get back to the notes. But it was yeah. Let me keep going. The next thing that I wanted to definitely touch on is this whole thing about Hitler being a monster and Piers Morgan, once again, on his moral high ground. Like, you said Hitler was cool. Like, who does, and I'm, a certain part of me is glad that Nick said, what, too soon? When he said the Holocaust joke. We can make jokes about everything else. We can make jokes about slavery. We can make jokes about this. But jokes about certain people are just off limits. Just asking. And staying on that point, it's funny how Piers Morgan has all this energy based on Nick saying, oh, I think Hitler's cool. And even though Nick clarified that and elaborated on it, saying that, obviously he doesn't condone the genocide. I mean, he is one of the ones that has been calling the current one that's going on. He's been calling that out a lot longer than people and a lot louder than people. But here Piers Morgan thinks that he can police who Nick thinks is cool. So without me playing victim, and I'm not trying to offend anybody or get y'all upset, but I'm just using it to prove a point. Why are we allowed to look at Christopher Columbus as cool, but Hitler's off limits? Why are we allowed to celebrate Christopher Columbus, but Nick Fuentes can't even say that Hitler's cool? Why are we allowed to celebrate Christopher Columbus, but Nick Fuentes can't say that he remembers Stalin's birthday because it's a relevant date for him? How do we pick and choose? I'm just wondering, because it seems like it's based on certain people's perspective. You know how they say history is written through the eyes of the victor? Well, who is this written in the eyes of? Who is this perspective being policed by? Through what perspective? Because I want to know, I legit want to know, why is it okay for us to look at and celebrate Christopher Columbus in one way, but Piers Morgan thinks that it's ridiculous, or whatever else adjective, whatever word he used to describe it in his English accent? Why is it not okay for Nick Fuentes to say that Hitler had certain things cool about him? But Piers Morgan wants to, at the same time, stand up for black people. So I wish Nick kind of put all this stuff together, and it's very hard for Nick to even, we can't expect Nick to know everything about everything. But one of the points that I would have addressed is, let's talk about Jesse Owens. And somebody brought it up in the live chat. Jesse Owens, American black person. Since Piers Morgan seems to care so much about black Americans, well, Jesse Owens went to the Olympics with Hitler and the Nazis. And based on the stories that I've heard, he said that he was treated a lot better there and was congratulated when he won, I believe, by Hitler and some of the leadership in the Nazi party, but then came home and was dealing with more racism at home for the country that he won an Olympic medal for. And I believe it was Woodrow Wilson, who was president at the time, Never even reached out to him. Never even reached out to him. Let's actually confirm that. Who was president when Jesse Owens won gold? Let's see. Just so we're not throwing any mishaps out there. I'm sorry, not Woodrow Wilson. My apologies. It was FDR. So I got to correct that. I actually said that earlier in the live. I'll make sure that I go back and correct that. It was FDR. I believe that FDR did not reach out to him. So Piers Morgan, who cares so much about black people, and we're obviously looking at this from a perspective thing, why is it okay for us to, if Jesse Owens' personal experience with Hitler was like, hey, he was a nice guy, is that okay to say? Or do we always have to see things through the world of Jewish people, through pro-Israel Zionists? Because I don't see the ADL and Jonathan Greenblatt jumping out the window trying to get rid of Christopher Columbus Day. I've never heard them speak on it. Maybe they have, but I've never heard them speak on it. Who's led to more deaths? You think that Hitler killing 6 million Jews, you want to know the numbers on what Christopher Columbus and his voyage, how many people that led to being killed? It's not even close. And once again, this is what happens when you start trying to play police of who people can like and who people can appreciate and who people can think is cool. Eventually, you got to answer for those very same things. And this is why I know it's not about principles when it comes to Piers Morgan, and it's not about principles for a lot of people when it comes to Nick Fuentes, why they dislike him. It's because you just don't like him. It's because he bothers you. He triggers you emotionally. It's not because you care about black people, so don't waste an entire half of a show discussing how Nick Fuentes views black people. All that does is add more division, more fire to the flame, and that's what they're trying to do. Make it about what it is. And this is why I always have that same energy when it comes to Nick with the Wang half shirts. Nick, black people didn't cancel you, brother. So instead of making a t-shirt that offends them, why don't you make a t-shirt, if you're going to use a slur, use one based on somebody that offends you? Why just single out black people? Why? We ain't running anything. Why punch down? You a superhero, brother. Punch up. Go after the big boss of the game. Don't go after the little homie. So just some thoughts that I have as I go through this. Let me keep going. I'm not going to keep y'all too long. Honestly, I'm tired after doing two lives yesterday and a 7-hour live today, but we're going to get through it. Let's keep going. But yeah, I think this is going to be one of Nick's biggest challenges. And I mentioned it earlier, as far as him finding people that can give him constructive criticism and constantly push him to grow and develop and maximize his potential. And I think Nick brought up something as far as like, even with Pierce, like, hey, the people are following me. And I'm not sure that he meant it how I'm getting ready to describe it, but I just want to make a point, and it may land for some of y'all, may land for Nick, may not. But hear me out, because I'm being genuine, at least when I'm saying it. Just because people follow you does not mean that you're standing on the right things. Now, it also doesn't mean that you're not standing on the right things. And a lot of times, even what we discussed yesterday, the market determines your value, right? So let the people decide. Similar to what Trump said when they were trying to get him to disavow Tucker and Nick. Nah, put the stuff out there, let people talk, and let the people decide. The challenge that comes along with that is because people are becoming such fanatics, fans of Nick Fuentes, perhaps they're not even able to see a lot of the constructive criticism and relay that to him. They're not able to put pressure on him and to say, hey, do a little bit better in this area. Or like, hey, you did well, but here's some areas where you can improve. When I go on the comments once again of the show, it's like Nick should be walking out like he's undisputed champ of the world, had a Floyd Mayweather against Canelo Alvarez type of performance, pitched a shutout, but that's not what it was. And when you don't evaluate yourself, like I come from a sports background with football. There's been plenty of games that I played in where my parents after the game, or Maya may have said like, oh, you played well. Or my big bro might have said, yo, you had a good game. And me in the back of my head, I'm like, yo, there's like 3 plays that I wish I can get back because they're going to look terrible on film and significantly drop my grade. But they don't know that. They don't know that. And because they're fans of me, they're going to rationalize. They're going to look at it from my best interest. They're going to look at it and say, yeah, you're better than that other player. But they're looking at that player in a different way. They're judging them differently on a harsher scale than they are judging me. But that doesn't do me any favors. When it comes to coaches, the coaches that have been on me the most, annoying me, pressing me, that I couldn't stand perhaps in a lot of times. But those are the ones that got the most out of me, the constructively critical ones, not the ones that just told me that I was perfect and I did everything right. So that's a good challenge for Nick to be able to face. He's earned that. He's earned that ability to now be able to go back and figure it out for himself. Maybe he has to bring some people on board. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's certain things that I think he can significantly improve on if he wants to maximize his potential. But once again, let me be also realistic and come with a certain level of humility regarding this, because Nick is way bigger than me. I'm reviewing Nick's video. Nick's not reviewing my video. So I am very well aware of that. I just want to, be able to give some constructive criticism where I see fit, take it or leave it. So this is only from a constructive standpoint that I'm voicing, because I really do think that, he's got the potential to do some amazing things and to really influence a whole bunch of people. And selfishly, I'm pushing for him to lean in the direction that aligns with the things that I want. But I'm not waiting for him like a savior. I'm doing my own thing. You feel me? Like, we're going to keep pushing regardless. But I do want to make that suggestion just because, in case he sees the video or anything else like that. And I want us all to make sure that when we're looking at a lot of these things, that we're not just going into a debate between Piers Morgan and Nick Fuentes and just looking at it from a standpoint of like, yo, who won? Or I'm rooting for Nick, my guy. What we end up doing is we create blind spots for ourselves where we start to rationalize things to see them the way that we want it to lean in our direction. This happens all the time when I'm watching a boxing match, where the person that I'm rooting for, I'm like, yeah, they got that round. If it's a close round, then I'll give them the edge, where it's like, well, they were the aggressor. And if the other person that I was rooting for wasn't the aggressor, I was like, well, they did a better job boxing, hitting and not getting hit. You know what I mean? Like, you can rationalize things however you want to in a lot of ways. But once again, overall, I think Nick won. I think this was his first interview that was combative in a while. So, I had to get the rust off a little bit. But ultimately, yeah, I believe that he stood on a lot of things. I'm glad that he elaborated in certain areas where he didn't initially elaborate on, but eventually he got to that point. So I'm happy about that. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. Then the next thing that I was actually looking up while Nick was talking was this article that was written about him in the New York Post, I guess. So that's Rupert Murdoch's, I guess, newspaper. That's his. I guess it's still called a newspaper. I don't know what the technical definition of it is, but I did not know that he had a stake in Piers Morgan's independent company. It's like, you're independent, but yeah, you still take money from the same people. So is it really independent? I don't know. Or are you not influenced? We don't know. But I think that it's embarrassing on Elon Musk's part. It's embarrassing to Elon Musk when, because you own the platform and somebody else that you're criticizing responds to you with a ratio post highlighting the ratio of people that will like, repost, and engage with Elon, who is way bigger influence-wise as far as followers on X. But I can't say as far as influence, but as far as followers. And they're now complaining, saying that, oh, he has bots from the Middle East and all this other stuff. Maybe people from the Middle East just rocking with somebody who actually had the courage to stand up and speak on something like a genocide occurring to Arabs in the region and Palestinians. Maybe that's one of the reasons. I don't know. But the fact that y'all are saying that he has fake followers and all this stuff, it's like, come on, bro. You don't have to be a statistician looking at numbers and whatnot to understand that Nick Fuentes perhaps has the biggest influence of anybody in recent years. I would say that, I remember Andrew Tate, when I first found out about him, I found out a little bit late, but he was saying that he's the most Googled person in the world. Like, this is Nick's on another level. Nick's on another level. And when you go through this article, it's just embarrassing. Like, they're doing everything they can. Honestly, Nick should take this as a compliment, because they are doing everything that they can do to just try to silence him and to try to cancel him without officially canceling him, because they can't do that, because it won't align with their conservative values and censorship and how the thought on free speech. So it'll be interesting to see how how Nick's engagement continues to grow, and how a lot of these other people, like I think a Piers Morgan, may walk out of that interview thinking that he did a lot better than what's going to actually show up to people when they're watching it. I'm pretty sure he's been aware of the comments, and he's probably pulling his hair out. But he's also probably celebrating the fact that within, I believe, 5 hours, it reached 1 million views. So this is why when I started off saying, well, did Pierce win? Did Pierce lose? Pierce won in a lot of ways, because we got to remember, Pierce isn't a debater. Nobody tunes into Pierce to hear his perspective on something. He's just an instigating moderator. He's just the instigator. So did Pierce win? I mean, what does he typically get done on his show? He tries to create some emotion around a big argument back and forth to gain a whole bunch of views. And he got that done. He got his views. What else did he get? That's really all he's concerned with, getting his views, getting his ad revenue. And most importantly, perhaps what he got is, now because he did a better job, and I put that in air quotes, of pushing back on a lot of the things that Nick Fuentes has said, now he won't be labeled as a whatever Tucker Carlson was being labeled. I'm trying to think, like, yeah, you're labeling anti-Semitic and platforming this person, and you're this and you're that, you're a traitor, all this other stuff. He won't get labeled as that, I don't think, based on this interview. But what's so funny about it is, I think that this interview will be more damaging to the people that are concerned. And I'm talking about with all the anti-Semitism, because that's been the main thing. The people that are concerned with platforming Nick Fuentes because he spews anti-Semitism, I think that they're going to actually realize that Piers Morgan doing what he did to go out of his way to support what it seems like Israel, Zionism, and the Jewish culture, I think it's going to backfire. I think it's going to backfire, because it just showed how silly Piers was. And perhaps people will attribute that to a lot of his stances compared to approaching Nick from a more mature standpoint, and people actually seeing that, hey, Piers Morgan, like, Nick is a young guy. He's got to get a little bit more mature like Pierce. And then, maybe I'll entertain him a little bit more. It didn't come across like that. Even when Nick was joking around, being silly, it just looked like Piers Morgan was just a big child. The things that he's pushing, well, you think this? Nick's like, yeah. Pierce was stuck. You think this? You think, well, what? You're a racist? You're a racist? Like, bro, nobody's tripping off of that. Nobody's tripping off of that. Nobody is tripping off of you being a racist, you being this, you being that. Like, bro, there's more important priorities here. That may be somewhere on the list, but it's at the bottom of the priority list. It's on the bottom. Based on, like, people are logical people. We're trying to, people looking for substance. Nick Fuentes brings honesty. You may disagree with him, but he's being genuine. I do believe that. And he's willing to say things. And a lot of people are saying, like, is this like the Overton window? Is this something where Nick Fuentes says certain things and then he opens the door for other people to question certain things? Perhaps. But I think he's actually, a lot of the things that he's saying, he believes. Maybe he's been pissed off to the point where he'll say it in a more radical way. But I don't know if that's his only focus. I see that as more like, I do see that with some of the things that Kanye does. But when it comes to Nick, I don't typically get that. It may be that. I don't know. But I think Nick actually wants to be the person. I don't think Nick wants to be the person who just opens the door for the next person. Maybe he does. I don't know. But I think that Nick is standing on a lot of the things that he actually believes, even if he does use hyperbole and performative rhetoric at certain times. So that's really, do I have anything else for y'all? I'm just going to leave it at that. I do need to look up the Rutgers CCIS. I took notes of that. And I'm also going to take a look at Max Blumenthal's father, Sidney Blumenthal, because this is not the first time that Nick mentioned Sidney Blumenthal, Max Blumenthal. And the fact that Tucker collaborated on that hit piece, perhaps it says a lot. Perhaps it says a lot. And perhaps it says also a lot about Nick Fuentes, the fact that he was willing to genuinely commit to trying to be peaceful with Tucker. But Tucker just, you know, he is being two-faced. He is being two-faced, like Nick said in the interview. This is my opinion. So perhaps, you know, but like I said, Nick was still trying to give him grace, still trying to look past the little pop shots that Tucker was taking at him. But it gets to a point where it's like, what are you going to do? So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. Sorry for rambling. Sorry if I didn't connect all the dots or make as much sense as I hope that I typically do. But yeah, it's been no excuses. So once again, always appreciate y'all. Like and subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know where I may be off on something, maybe missed. My bias definitely came into play with this interview. So I may not have been able to be as objective as I thought that I was, but that's what I got y'all here for, to hold me accountable. So please make sure that you do continue to like, continue to subscribe, and turn your notifications on. As my big bro Robert always says, you know, we control the algorithm. We don't let the algorithm control us. And on that note, I'll see y'all soon. Dude.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there. Let's figure out a split that's honorable and fair. Tell me where you trying to take it. Bro, I'll meet you there. 1600 Penn, Wash, DC. Swear I saw the vision riding through the DMV. I envision prayers, but I could do VP. Hillbilly, Elegy, fuck, I look like JD. Shout out my cheat code, Dave and Karen raised me. And my big bro, a nuclear family.
And they don't like that. Strong fathers in the crib, BLM for that. LBJ society created all that. Victimhood mentality, I can't embrace that. And everything they taught in school, assume it's all cap. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Ain't no introduction, just some fun facts. In case you were wondering, I am that.
I know you heard me hit it 3 times for Dr. Umar. Shout out to Umar, man. We ain't kicking nobody when they down. And shout out to everybody that continues to show love, support, appreciating the message that I'm giving y'all, along with the bro Nick's message. We gonna keep pushing, man. And shout out to the haters too, cause y'all in the comments heavy too. y'all the ones that gave me the inspiration to create this song. They kept saying like, who's the random black guy in the corner? I am.